Hello SGD, and let's look at one of his newest videos, which is just a rehash of an older video. It's proof we have no idea how Egyptians moved 1,000 ton stones hundreds of miles. With this lost ancient high technology stuff, well, they have a certain pattern. So this was a shorter video and there's a longer 1 hour live stream, but it's all got the same in there. And the main focus of this and the evidence that they present is this stone called levitated mass. And so what they're going to do is they're going to speak as if knowledgeable, well-researched. They're going to use comparisons with modern technology. This is their common methodology. They create a doubt, and then this can only be answered by lost ancient technology. In the longer video, even bright insight, even like we must question physics. So levitated mass, 340 ton boulder move 106 miles to LA, Los Angeles County Municipal Museum of Art, But so let's look first. We had the Riverside Quarry and the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, where the levitated mass is situated. It's 60 miles as the crow flies, 106 miles because they took a route. But they had to avoid overpasses and other things and this is a very important point, modern roads and overpasses are designed for high-speed traffic. They're not designed for megalith moves. So that's why they have weight restrictions on them. We can certainly build more expensive bridges for heavier objects, why a rail bridge would be designed differently from a traffic bridge. But anyway, so this path, even though they avoided overpasses and some particular roads which were just not set up for it, they're passing over the road and the infrastructure, pardon the typo. So though the quarry is less than 60 miles from the LACMA campus, the circuitous 106-mile route traversing 22 cities in 4 counties was taken in order to avoid busier roads or overpasses that could not support the combined weight of the boulder and transporter. Numerous trees were cut down, cars towed, traffic lights temporarily removed in order to facilitate the transporter's move. So then they come in and this giant trailer had to be constructed to support the weight of this immense 340 ton boulder. This is just how this is how they work. They set up false equivalencies. Now another important point, Jimmy Corsetti knows about this. This goes back years. This was rehashed. All the lost ancient high-tech people using this as an example, but it's important to them to create these because they're dishonest. Let's just be frank about that. I've dealt with them for a while. They ignored, and they know about these things. They know about the examples of people lifting, so they don't really have an excuse to maintain. It could have been explained by ignorance. Now it is a part of this deliberate grift, the lie that they need to protect their income. They're not interested in truth. So the giant trailer, loaded in 295 foot long, 196 wheeled transporter, custom built, 22 axles overall. Then in the video we all know a semi-trailer, we know the amazing difference. Well, it's an important point that there is an amazing difference, and that is the number of axles. And so if you've ever been do they have did they pass their driving test? Because they should be familiar with signs like this, the weight limit. You'll see these signs, and they've got a 2-axle truck, 8 tons, a 3-axle truck, 12 tons, 4-axle truck, 16 tons. In other words, each axle, depending on the road, has 4 tons because you've got to spread the load. So this trailer needed to support the massive this is the greatest boulder ever. We struggled with it. The trailer was not needed to support that weight. The 22 axles are for another purpose, because all this weight is hung from underneath the trailer. The trailer isn't supporting the weight. What's supporting the weight are these turnbuckles, which off the shelf used to deal with in this industry, and so you've just got there's 8, so 4 on this side, 4 on the other. So you could have 50 ton turnbuckles. You probably have a little bit higher just to be safer. But this is off-the-shelf equipment. That is what's supporting the weight. This trailer has nothing to do with the weight of the stone. It has to do, as we'll see in a moment, it is there to distribute the weight over urban roads. That's the only purpose for all those axles and wheels. More axles, more wheels per axle distributes the weight. That's all there is to it. So theoretically, based on this sign, the semi-trailer would be 5 axles would be allowed to carry 20 tons. The reason for this is because this is rutting. If streets have got no heavy vehicles on this road, etc., because the road is built to a certain standard, and if it's only designed for light traffic and cars, they're not going to invest millions of dollars to build a little road to service a couple of houses. Highways are built better because they're going to have heavy vehicles, transport vehicles, but this is an example of rutting caused by maybe a badly built road, but caused by overweight vehicles on the cars. Now, as an example, and this goes back to 2014, thousands of dollars in 2014 per lane mile. So freeway, expressway, interstate, small urban, just resurfacing, $564,000 per lane per mile in 2014. So just to resurface a single lane over 106 miles back in 2014. But this big trailer is going over multiple lanes, so you have to multiply all of that. So if they hadn't built this trailer, they would never have got the insurance, they would never have got the permits, and they would have, even if they wouldn't let you do it, even if you could afford to pay the bill, because it just shuts down the city. But it would be facing a bill of $500 million just to resurface the damaged roads. But that's not even the point, because underneath the asphalt or the road surface there is the road base. If that gets broken, that needs to be replaced, and that's many times again the cost. But more importantly, in a big city like Los Angeles, you have gas lines, power lines, phone cable lines, sewer lines, even there's a few gas and petrol lines running through to service as well. If you run over, you break the road, you break the services. And so it's not just the cost of fixing and replacing those, it's also the compensation that would go to all the businesses affected. Billions and billions of dollars. So that's the only reason for the trailer. Now they look at this image and then they confuse the people with, but look at the trailer's needed to support it. Well, again, the trailer doesn't support it. There's only a few little turnbuckles there supporting it. Put a few bits of wood underneath, you'll be able to support the weight. This is just not an issue, but this is how they work. So 22 axle, distribute the weight over modern roads. That's simple as it is to it. And even 300 ton all-terrain crane dolly. It's only got 3 axles. This is a 1 to 200 ton power dolly, self-propelled basically. But then you have, this is a gantry crane used to move big yachts around the dock. 1,500 ton. This is not even approaching the limit of what modern cranes can do, and also be mobile at the same time. There's not 196 tires on this one, but it's carrying 1,500 tons because the ground has been, they've got nice, thick, reinforced supports, so the issue of breakage isn't a problem. But in that video, when he goes, but look at this, is it the BELAZ 450, the world's largest, heaviest payload capacity haul truck, but it's of a heaviest payload capacity. Well, this is 450 ton, and again in the lifting and moving game, insignificant weight in regards to modern tech, but also we'll look at examples before modern tech. But again, it's a false comparison, because this is designed for it's a mine truck. And what they're designed to do is for speed and economy. We've got a lot of mining's really big in Australia, and the drivers of these type of vehicles, they're under a lot of pressure because they have to do so many loads per day. And they're highly monitored now. They're even moving to self-driving, but they're under GPS control, and they're making sure that they're getting all their loads per day. And that's that's what this vehicle is working for. It's meant to go up and down these steep, especially in pit mines. It's going up and down the roads. It's got to work all day long. It's got to be reliable, and all, but it's not a cutting edge weight limit. There's a whole other thing pushing this. So, but these are carefully chosen false comparisons. They give it, now we have a sense of, look at this 350 ton and this 450 ton. Why didn't he look at a heavier vehicle? Because it's a false comparison. It's a false narrative, because in a moment he's going to switch to the Colossi of Memnon, which is 720 tons, basically double, or close to double of these vehicles. So these vehicles struggle at, they're the cutting edge, highest capacity, and so how did the ancients do double? That's the sole purpose. It's a very cunning trick, but it is a lie, because they know better. They know these other things, they're liars, and they know, and they cannot really deny it anymore. But okay, so what he uses for commonly, and you even see big like Joe Rogan, look at this, but a guy drops a 1.5 ton boulder into the back of his 1/2 ton pickup, and then surprise, surprise, okay, well, what is that pickup designed for? It's not designed for that weight. It's designed to go across highways at high speed at the weight that it's designed for. The shocks are designed to keep, to stop the car, bounce and make a comfortable ride at high speed. You can even see that the pallet brakes. Now this pallet would support that weight as well, because it's been dropped on there. So the people who were filming this video knew exactly what they were doing, or they were incredibly stupid. But given the number of them around, you can see other vehicles in the background, they weren't. This is a setup. It's a viral video, and that's all it is. But, well, to Jimmy and Joe Rogan, well, why are they so hesitant to look? Modern technology can't. Why don't you just look back in the age of photography before these modern vehicles were around, and we have people working, loading much larger block, and it's a marble, so the weight is affected. It's the same block of granite of that size would be the same weight, even less. But what do? Couple of guys with levers loading onto a wooden wagon. That's how, and so people could absolutely do this. They did do it, but these lost high-tech guys, they're just obsessed with creating a false mystery. There are accidents and fails, crane collapse. There are channels on YouTube and other sites devoted to crane failures. And so what Bright Insight does, he picks these crane failures, and for a lot of people who have got any clue of how these things work, they'd see immediately it's an operator error, or in some cases it's clearly that the person operating the vehicle is making a viral video to look as if it's struggling. Anyway, so back to the 340 ton boulder moved 106 miles. It's got nothing to do with weight limits or the struggling with these weights, not even close to that. It's an issue of moving them on modern roads, compacted earth. Now you look at any huge mining equipment, which weighs a lot more than what that 450 ton capacity haul truck moved. They move across compacted earth, not a modern asphalt road with pipes and cables running beneath them, and they move massive weights. The vehicle is absolutely massive. The amount of gear there, well, the pile, it's just silly. But this is called the largest operation of its kind since the Egyptians built the pyramids. So this is again like it's a dumb. I can call anything, but it's not even close to being that, because there have been bigger moves before this. But let's go back, was it 1700s? This is the Alexander column in St. Petersburg. This is heavier than any obelisk that was ever moved in ancient Egypt, 650 tons, roundabout. Weight, huge, moved. Now, I covered it a bit, but look, so that's the block that they extracted to make the original column. Levers, compound pulleys, this is all capstans, all ancient tech. Now, this block was several times heavier than the column which came later, because it was longer and wider, so I had to extract the column from this. So all that so what did that, at least probably at least twice as heavy as the unfinished obelisk in Aswan, but let's just say it's twice the weight. This was a massive block with ancient tech. They moved it, and then they prepared it, then they shifted it. Now this is erecting a 650 ton obelisk with wood and rope using ancient tech. This tech was known to be used by the Roman engineers such as Vitruvius even say all of our technology in regards to lifting emerged from sailing, and things like compound pulleys and capstans, even the Romans were saying these are so ancient that their origins are lost. So they're going to say, well, we'll prove that the Egyptians had it. Well, okay, I don't have a time machine for that, but the Egyptians had big ships. Big ships, whether it's Romans, Carthaginians, Greeks, couldn't operate unless they had understanding of mechanical advantage. So unless you're suggesting those Egyptians had like magical powers to operate when you see them with those big ships and boats and managing the sails and putting them together, unless your argument is they had magical powers to work those ships, then the obvious deduction is that they understood mechanical advantage. Now, we have found pulleys going back to 2000 BC in Egypt. So again, you hear, oh, they didn't have the wheel and they didn't have pulleys. Well, they did, and but just logic alone. So then he's going to, well, I have a 350-ton levitated mass, and this haulage truck at the world's biggest at 450. So how could they move 720 tons? Well, you can just go to any. We have 20,000-ton, even bigger cranes. So you could put all these statues, including the ones in the background, including the Ozymandias, the 1,000-ton. We have cranes that could lift all of them at once. But what he's done is he's created the mystery. 350 ton high. They struggled. And look at this giant. How did they do it? Well, so then he's going to show the path. So just outside of Cairo is a quartzite quarry for which those colossi of Memnon were found. And then he's plugged in the car route to give a distance of 640 or just to say 400 miles. So more than 3 times, almost 4 times the amount that levitated mass has to move. So now he set this up. So there's a colossi of Memnon. He set it up by road. Now colossi. Now we need to look at photos like this, because now we get a better. Egypt now, compared to what it used to be, is very different because they built the high Aswan Dam. We don't have the floods now. Okay, here's another Egypt as it used to be. There's some more pics, but this one here, we can see the Ramesseum in the background, and that's where the 1,000-ton now collapsed. And let's assume it was a single piece 1,000 tons statue. Reasonable assumption, I'm not doubting that, but again, with these ones in Tanis and these other ones, let's just assume they are, because the colossi of Memnon is, and it's not that much of a difference to get there. Alright, but the El Gebel El Amar quarry, just south of Cairo, that's where the stone come from, and that's on the east bank, and the colossi are on the west bank, so they had to have crossed the river. Now some people will say, oh, they didn't have the boats back then. Well, anyways, they had to cross the river. But again, studied, okay, we know where it is, but then we look at the moved monoliths, and this is a really bad list because this Wikipedia list doesn't have Alexander's column there, for instance. Okay, transported 420 miles from El Gebel El Ammar, modern day Cairo, overland without using the Nile. This is one of, the stones are believed to be too heavy to have been transported upstream on the Nile. Well, believed by who? Now, this really goes, things like a guy 100 years ago roughly sort of said this, and it's just one of these sort of citations, and it's not even really cited, but you just hear it so often repeated over and over again, but it hasn't really been examined. So, to be fair to those who, if you read it from it, okay, but let's look a little bit further. So the idea was that they moved it overland along the east bank of the Nile, and I'm guessing now what they thought happened. Then they got it above, then they crossed on a barge, and then they could float it back in. Because believed too heavy to have been transported upstream on the Nile. No doubt about it being downstream, but alright, there are all sorts of problems because of a landscape there, or if they went across the muddy bank, where the agricultural area is, okay, but also back then, because you had the yearly flood, that green strip which follows the river would have been going in further, and the irrigation and so. But anyway, here's a point. Now, a river, the Nile, begins, the blue and the whiteness, so they begin down in Ethiopia and near Lake Victoria. So I've just plotted out a few places along the river and just have their elevation above sea level. So as you come down out of Ethiopia, just before when the White and Blue Nile join together, say 348 metres above sea level. Then 225 metres above sea level, then 156 metres above sea level. So on that distance there, which is very similar to the distance to the ocean, it's dropped nearly 200 metres. All right, but then we come to the Ramesseum and the Colossi of Memnon, 75 metres above sea level, follow the river down to the quarry that's 16 metres above sea level. The steeper the river, the faster it flows, but by the time just above Aswan, the quarry, is the cataracts. They're like waterfalls. That's the last big steep fall of the river. From there to the sea, there's no rapids, cataracts, anything like that. It's a smooth, one of the most navigable rivers. It's perfectly designed. From that point on, it's just so smooth. Now, between the quarry and the Colossi, the river descends very gently, has a very slow current compared to the upper parts of the Nile. So that angle, approximately 0.005 degrees. It's a very gentle river. Now, the length of the river, because it's also twisting and turning, is much longer than as the crow flies one. So this part of the river, between the Ramesseum and the quarry just next to Cairo, very, very slow, slower than the Nile average. If I was looking into the current speed of the Nile, they tend to give averages, so what you really have to do is look at the lower part of the river compared to the steep upper part of the river. Now, we also have, so here's a flow rate. Now, 2009, you see that the line is more constant because the dam is there now and it regulates the flow. Prior to that, you had the yearly flood, so from August to November, December, the flow was much faster because the flood season. But during this part, it'd be less than 1 kilometre per hour, maybe to affect almost at zero, almost at a standstill during the dry part of the year. Yeah, but not less than this is the high level. So no, okay. You could get those up there, but here's another beauty thing about the Nile. The current, of course, flows down to the sea, but the average winds are northerly, which means that you take the current and your oars and you go down the river, and when you want to go back up, pull out your sails because the wind is helping you. It's very unusual as rivers go. It's just this is how their civilization was able to work, because they just were blessed with this river, which the water, the sediment, for the fertility, but also for the it's like the highway, the heartbeat of Egypt anyway. So winds assist upriver travel. So if people say that you couldn't get them on a barge, well, I've dealt with, no, this is just, because I have a Khufu ship, okay, but anyway, winds assist going up, so unlike other stones, usually granite from Aswan, that went down the river, not an issue. So the problem was, some people believe they couldn't have got them upriver. Well, why? Because the river assists travel upstream during the right part of the year. The flow rate goes down to zero. And as a historical example, ports such as the Thames, how did they get the boats up there if the wind wasn't? Well, if you want to get people would rowboats would pull the ships up the river into ports of London, any major port really, and even had just like in the canals, you have horses or oxen or people on the side pulling them up as well. So I wouldn't bet the house, but I'd bet I'd bet a little bit of money that, almost like when people believe it cannot be done, looking at it, why not? I think it's just, someone said it in the past, it's been repeated over and over, so to be fair to the lost high-tech people who repeat this, well, it's interesting also when an archaeologist says something they like, then it's gospel. When they say something that doesn't fit their narrative, then it's a conspiracy or, stupid archaeologists, with their BMWs and caviars. So the Ramesseum statue, 1,000 tonnes, 25% extra from the colossi of Memnon. If we go back, very receive a flood, so that would help get the final stage. And so again, that Ramesseum with the is there, which is even, I don't think this, but the amount that you would have to transport it. So when I say transported hundreds of miles, well, it's correct, they were transported hundreds of miles, but if it's on the river, it's very different from moving them overland. It's only the colossi of Memnon, which are also classed as this, difficult because they're upstream. They're rare. All the big obelisks and blocks in the Great Pyramid, they're all downstream. So Colossi, the Ozymandias, the big statue at the Ramesseum, was from Aswan, so that came downstream. Alright, so what you get is, first we set up with deliberately false comparisons, such as talking about the trailer and the levitated mass, ignoring all examples of much larger stones moved in the past with ancient technology, and also examples like designed to fail or operator failure of cranes. But if they're genuinely interested, they're not interested in examples like this. And I've posted videos of these old photos of these people moving. This is not huge. These are guys with bars putting them onto a wagon. So they deliberately exclude that, which answers. I'm just asking questions, but they're brilliant at censoring the very answers to their questions. And it is a cult. It is a religion at this part, and they're genuine. In the past, they might have been excused for doing absolutely piss poor research, but when these things have been shown to them, that they censor them. And I'm very clearly, Jimmy Corsetti and these other people actively censor the very information which they ask for. It's one of their tricks. Well, you do this, okay? Or show me an example of this, and then they'll just shift the goalposts and it's extraordinary, and they'll even question physics. But look, at the most charitable, what you can say about them is their research ability is pathetic. That's the nicest thing you can say about them. But having seen this over the last decade and over the last few years, being very active to counter their information, they are genuinely it is a grift. Now maybe there is an element of there where they're so into it that it's a self-delusion, but they're lying to themselves and to you, whatever, if it's pure malicious motive or whether it's self-delusion, it is still a lie. And again, the questions that they ask for have been answered, and they deliberately censor them. So that is the crux. They censor this information. And truth seekers, we're just looking for the truth. Well, they're guilty of all the things that they accuse other people of, which is usually the way. So it just gets rehashed all the time. It's always you can't be lifted, it can't be carted, the striations can't be repeated, what can I say? It's just the same old, and they keep on repeating it. With that, is it Happy New Year and holidays, whatever your happenings are. Merry Christmas to me and my kin, and SGD, have a good one.